All right. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Kate with Kate's Regretless Life. Let's go ahead and take a look at signs and symbols for the day. Let's see what our storyline looks like. We start with the High Priest and Gemini. So we could have possibly a Taurus for starters, followed by Gemini, followed by the Selkie, the Two of Cups, the Nine of Air. Let me grab one more. And the Four of Air. All right, so we have got a story possibly of divine counterpart, and somebody knows it, right? They know that this is an important relationship. That's undoubted. I feel, though, like this could be a masculine that is older now, and they're just now able to look back and reflect and say, she was the love of my life. She was my... Both of these cards are really like twins, right? The Two of Cups and the Gemini. And that, you know, at a diagonal, we see those two with him off to the side. And if he is older now, and this was him when he was younger, he's realizing, I had a chance. I stood beside the love of my life. And I know now that that was the love of my life. I've never met anybody that I felt that way about. I've never met anybody who matched me so well. I've never had that connection before or since. So this was the one. Now, underneath this Gemini energy, with the twins, I mean, maybe they thought they would meet somebody else. Maybe they were trying to decide between her and someone else. Maybe she was very unique, someone that they couldn't quite put their finger on. She might have been incredibly independent, but it almost feels like if they were unsure about her, if they were still trying to decide between her and somebody else, first off, they chose wrong. This is a story of possibly a divine masculine who chose wrong. They picked the wrong partner, and now they've basically, this is just huge amounts of stress, but we can see that it's like the relationship that they should have had with their Two of Cups is the relationship that they let die, that they didn't nurture, that they didn't choose, that they didn't protect. Now, the reason they maybe were so confused about whether or not she was the right one for them was because with the Selkie, the mythos around Selkie, I feel like this card comes out a lot, so forgive me if you've heard me say this before, but the Selkies are the seals that in Norse mythology and, well, in several cultures, Selkies are these seals that can come up on land and shed their seal skin, and then they look like just a beautiful human woman. However, they are, you know, magical beings that are part female and part seal. And so while she can appear to be a woman and even, you know, marry and have human children on land, at some point she tends to slip back into her seal skin and then swim back into the sea in many of the mythological tales. And I'm just saying and describing this to say, if they were unsure, like there was a sense of otherness to her and a sense of freedom and wildness to her. You know, the reason the Selkies like to slip back into their seal-skins and go back out to sea is because it's, you know, unconfining, and it's the, you know, the wild ocean that they get to, you know, swim through, and it's what they actually want. And it just kind of comes across here as if this, unfortunately, is a situation where they maybe thought she was too wild or too otherworldly, and they didn't really know what to make of her, even though they never felt about anybody the way they felt about her, and even though there's a component of her that matched that component of them so well. But then we see him very, like, kind of uptight and buttoned up. I'm wondering if he chose a more quote-unquote respectable person over her, and it was the biggest mistake of their life. She was the love of their life. She was the one. And it looks like she personally had to heal from either, you know, them not choosing her, them not being able to understand who she was, there's been a lot of silence, and I feel like she had really revealed the truth of who she was, and then ultimately was not chosen because of that. However, she may not know that she is the greatest regret of their entire life. And he knows this now at the core of his soul. He chose wrong. And I really do think that he chose somebody else in this story. And I'm sorry, I know that's an awful story, but Seven of Wands on her side, you know, she's definitely had a comeback story. By the way, some symbols for her, she could have like fairly like wild and free hair. He maybe wanted her to be like more slicked back, and we have to look like the way our community wants us to look. You know, you look wild and free and amazing, but he might have wanted somebody that fit into like a very narrow little category. We have to dress up in a certain way. We have to go out to the certain places. We have to look good for the Joneses. We have to, I don't know if he had a position of authority somehow. It looks like he cared a lot about money and impressions, and the impression that he would make upon others. And maybe she always was just a little bit, well, like a wild thing. But in being wild and real, talk about more powerful than somebody who has to like button up and, kowtow to society. But for some reason, I think money and image was very important to them. And I think she realizes it would have been something that she doesn't want to be on a leash. That would have been such an obstacle. To be with him would have been something she couldn't have done. She would have had to suppress most of who she really was. And I honestly think she may have shown him like a ferocious side to herself. She is not somebody that doesn't have a backbone, and she's not somebody who takes kindly to being put in boxes. Like, even the fact that she's got that duality to her nature, the fact that she wants to bust free and go back to the ocean and swim free like a little seal, I don't think she's somebody who would do well being put on a leash. I don't think she would have wanted to be with him, is the truth of it, if he were this concerned about keeping up with the Joneses. I don't believe she would have been willing to do that. And with the Seven of Wands being here, I think over time she healed from the fact that he didn't choose her, because in truth, she's going to have to wear a little uniform and always keep her opinions on a tight rein and in a tight leash. That's just not who she is. She could wear a lot of animal prints. She could particularly like tiger prints, which is kind of fun because all week this week I've been using a white tiger backdrop. If you don't know, you can catch any of my videos on my channel for any of the zodiacs just by going to the playlist and seeking whatever playlist you wish for whatever zodiac you might be looking for. But you'll notice all week I've been using a tiger backdrop. But for her, she may wear tiger print clothing, or she may have a real love for animals anyway. But I just feel like she's healed from what happened with them, because she realizes, you know what, I'm more like the wind, and you can't contain me. Instead, my thoughts and my words and my life, I'd rather be dynamic than be trapped and put on a tight leash. Let's go back over here and see if we can follow up. Okay. We have got the Nine of Wands, again with the tiger over here. This came across sideways. This is more talking about, so this is basically his side, this is her side, and then this is kind of like in the middle. Yeah, they could have been great together, but they both acknowledge that it's over. But with the Nine of Wands, this is that wounded warrior energy. But you notice she's like, hey, there's a whole big old world out there. For me to pick somebody else that would suit me better, who wouldn't try to make me put my tiger on a chain, on a leash. There was somebody out there who would love me for exactly who I am. So I'm not too worried about it, and I'm not really wounded. I get it. I was too much for them. They couldn't handle really somebody who's free. They couldn't handle that. But I don't belong in their world anyway. I'd much rather be free, and I'd much rather match with somebody who suits me. So that's her opinion here. And his 3 of Swords in the reverse, it kind of kills him, but I think he knows she's not heartbroken over him. Okay, can we go over to his side here? We've got the Justice card sideways and the Misery card. It, you know, it's kind of like John Lee Hooker says, serves you right to suffer, serves you right to be alone. No, I'm not trying to be mean here, but it just looks like he himself is aware that he is freaking miserable with the choices that he made, and that it was the wrong choice, and that he did her wrong. This is like, this was so messed up. This was, you know, how could I not have realized that I held the love of my life, and then I did her wrong by deciding she somehow wasn't good enough. I feel like wherever they live now, also they could have had a turn of fortune. They may be destitute right now. They could have lost a lot of money, all the stuff that they really cared about, which was like impressing other people or, you know, strutting their stuff, you know, in affluent circles. All that could have fallen apart if they chose somebody else. I don't even see them with somebody else. We see kind of, they may have chose someone over her at one point in time, but that other person doesn't even factor in. You notice the only thought on their mind is her. She was the love of my life, and I didn't pick her. I did her wrong, and now I'm miserable without her. But it also seems like if they chose somebody else for, you know, like, oh, this person is more containable, they follow the rules better, and I couldn't get her to follow the rules, so that we can, you know, walk through society and, you know, be accepted in these very stringent, you know, guidelines. Whatever they were chasing, which might have been acceptance in like wealthy circles or something along those lines, I don't even think they have that wealth anymore. This looks like they may have had a significant downturn of fortune, which is almost also maybe why they're saying I'm getting my just desserts. Not only did I do her wrong by not choosing the love of my life, I chose a petty, you know, like thought process. I need somebody who will, you know, make me look good in front of the Joneses, and she's too wild. I love her, but don't want to be with somebody who, you know, the Joneses. I care more about impressing the Joneses. So if they didn't choose her, the irony of it all is that whatever they chose instead of her, they chose money, they chose, you know, status. They didn't even wind up being able to keep that money and status. And that's the real irony of this. Even they see it. They see that, well, this is very fitting. I did her wrong, and now I've lost everything that I cast her aside for. Okay, very tough message on this one, right? He's not pulling any punches on this. This could be somebody is, you know, like he's in a place of like really struggling right now, downsizing, doesn't necessarily know what he's doing next. He could have had some significant losses. And I mean, he could be having to move in with family or something, and it's like, oh my God, what happened with the partner that you chose? Can I ask that? Two of Wands, Eight of Pentacles. Well, they definitely thought that this person would be moldable, but you know what's so wild? They did meet somebody, possibly somebody with beautiful brown eyes, but someone who was very malleable, and they were like, okay, this person will behave and fall in line. But the entire time they kept comparing and saying, this person is so dull. I want my wild, sulky woman. I think that they held on to photos of her. I think they held on all the time. They never really connected or committed to the person that they chose instead of her, because they were always still thinking that I think I would rather be with her. but maybe I can mold this other person into somebody that reminds me more of her. Maybe they can become more like her, but still malleable. Look, this person has serious control issues. I do not like this story at all. I don't like any, this just made it very terrible energy on this. All of this, like, desire to mold people, and this indecisive, wanting something else, but not going to go with something or someone that they love, but then picking somebody else and then trying to work on hoping that that new person would become more like the woman they didn't choose. Are they still with that individual that they didn't choose? Or, excuse me, the individual that they did choose over her? 9 of Cups. And this is them dancing with their shadow side. The 9 of Cups is normally somebody who's super self-indulgent. I would say if they picked a person who is, a representation of their shadow side, I don't know that I think that they're still with that person so much as they are with their shadow every day of their life. They're living in their decisions that they made. I don't know. It almost feels like they were never exactly with the person that they chose over her, is I guess what I'm trying to find the right words to describe. I hate to say it, but it's like the person that they chose over her was like a blank slate. It's like they never really cared too much about this person. And I know this sounds absolutely terrible, but we don't really see the person's face who they chose. We see some eyes. But it's like they were still like completely dismissive of the individual that they chose because it was only their shadow side that chose this. So it wasn't a real choice, and it wasn't like they were really connected to this other person. We have the Ace of Air and we have the Waxing Moon. No, so that relationship is ending. They may be signing legal documents and papers right now, actually, to sever the connection with the person that they did choose over their Selkie woman. It's, it's fading away. It's almost done and over. It's, so they're losing that connection too, even though that connection didn't really matter to them. And yet it mattered enough to them to choose this other connection over the person that was their 2 of Cups. Look, they have got karma hitting them right and left. This is really, really ugly, an ugly time for them, but they know it. They know exactly why this karma is here. Seeing the crescent moon could be another symbol, somebody filling out court documents or, official paperwork. Could be another symbol, somebody really noticing their shadow even as they're walking down the street, and somebody also working with clay. All of those could be symbols of the day, specifically mostly on his side of this. For her, it's mostly animals and tiger print specifically, and possibly white roses are going to be symbols for her today. She's in a place where she's kind of like fine with how everything ended, though. She's not filled with any of this regret or remorse. That's entirely on his side. So can I just ask, universe, is there any other message about like what happens like on his side of all of this? We have got dark moon, and you notice that we have a king's crown and it's over here on her side. I just feel honestly like he's gonna have to sit in his karma for a while. This, he's built the empire that he built, which happens to be one of misery and loss. He's not even still with that other person, or he's in the process of parting ways with that other person. He's having to sit and stew in the life that he chose, which was all chosen by his shadow side. He's got a lot of work to do on himself, and the universe is putting him in the timeout chair. He's got to sit with himself and deal with the choices that he's made. It's almost like he's not going to be seen or heard from for a while because he's got to work on why would he have ever chosen to behave the way he did. Because he's made mistakes at every turn in this story, right? He's, done her wrong. He's done love wrong. Then the person that he chose, he did her wrong too by never even caring enough to get to know who she was, and instead choosing somebody that would be malleable, all the while wishing he was with the Selkie. You know, everything here just says it was one selfish and empty mistake after another, because maybe he was in a selfish and empty frame of mind at one point. You know, the impressions of other people seeing him as being wealthy, that was more important. The older he's getting, and he could be prematurely aging in this, because there's a lot of misery, there's a lot of mistakes that he has to sit and stew in. And he's, you know, the universe has a funny way of like stripping things down so we can finally see the truth, you know, uncluttering and uncomplicating things so we can finally see the, you know, sum of our actions and what did we get for the actions that we took. Turns out he didn't get much for the actions that he chose to take. Tough message for sure, but kind of a good message, because what we see is hope at the end of this, right? We see him sitting there, you know, in the timeout chair, but we see him aware of it. He's not oblivious to this, which means he's, you know, intelligent enough and capable enough to see his actions and the repercussions of his actions and put two and two together and know that this is my karma, and also know this is my dark night of the soul. I have to work my way through my behavior so that I don't behave this way anymore. So yes, he's got some growing up to do, maybe, even if he's an older age now, and he's just now having to take a good hard look in the mirror and see that he doesn't like his own actions. Do we have one last card just for her? Where does she go, or what happens to her? The White Stag. Her name could start with an A. This is Artemis. You know, Artemis, the huntress. But this is a strong spiritual energy on this. Again, she and her animal side. She has a crown here as well. I almost think that she will continue to be the person that he hunts for. She may know that, but she's going to be quite elusive for now, knowing that she's kind of being hunted by him. Eventually, I think he'll be trying to find her again. But I also think that she's hunting for something. She's hunting for somebody who understands her like at a spiritual level, who doesn't try to suppress and oppress, you know, her energy. She came across as somebody who's not exactly wounded from this, but she's not impacted by this. But she knows she wouldn't choose to be put on a leash and caged. So she knows herself pretty well. But I think she's realizing she's seeking like partnership that will understand that element of her freedom and love her for that. I think that's what she's looking for. But I think she also realizes he was looking for someone who had the elements that I have, but that he could, like, you know, look at me as like the way a game hunter goes after an animal for no reason. You know, I think she's understanding, like, that's somebody who just wants to suppress freedom, who wants to take away another sovereign being's right to live for sport. You know, that's not anybody to be with. I think she knows better than to tangle with somebody like him, but she also knows she's seeking somebody who sees the divinity of her and the way she is and the freedom that she chooses to have. Doesn't mean she's not great in a relationship. She can be a very free creature and also be wonderful in a deeply committed relationship. But she's never going to care about how other people approve or disapprove of her. That's her unique sense of freedom. And I don't think she'll ever be captured by somebody who only wants to suppress her. And I think that's great that she knows that about herself spiritually, and that that's the only kind of spiritual match she could connect with, is somebody who understands that and feels the same way about that. All right, I'm going to leave this here. This got a little bit long. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. All right, I will see you again in the next one. Bye.